So, welcome to this conversation. Today, I'm joined by Aziz, who is an antinatalist and thinker from Kenya. And I'm really looking forward to this one because Aziz has been doing a run of podcasts recently with people that he knows and people who've invited him on to speak about antinatalism and other topics. And that's how I came across Aziz. And now we're having this discussion, and hopefully, you're going to be doing more podcast appearances as well. So, as a bit of an introduction, are you able to share how did you first come across antinatalism? Like, where did you first come across the idea, the word, and then any other sort of background you want to give about yourself as well?
I was born in Kenya, in a place called Mombasa, a very conservative Muslim island on the coast of Kenya, and I was like for my 13 years I lived in Mombasa, and then I moved to Nairobi for education purposes, like for high school. And after the first 9 months into my high school, I went to Turkey on a scholarship, and I finished my high school in Turkey in a city called Mersin, still conservative Muslim high school. And then after I went to my university, which is in Istanbul, Sabancı University. I always shout out my university because I feel like it's the place where I completely got to rethink about every single thing. And then I think after that I came back to Kenya. It was COVID at that time, and then I started working here, like in Kenya. So when I first heard about antinatalism, the thing was I, as a Muslim, I already was having antinatalist ideas, where I really used to think, as someone who believes in heaven and hell, and that this life is a test. The best thing that you can do as a parent is not bring another subject into this test, because every single mosque you go to on Friday sermons, you would always hear the imams speak about how harder and hard it is becoming, and how the prophecies say it will be harder and harder for the people who come after the prophet, and close to the day of judgment, to go into heaven. And hell is very graphic in Islam. Hell is is a place where you're going to be put in for eternity, kept alive by God, just for you to burn and burn. I think the Quran talks about your skin coming back, burning off and coming back, and like in this kind of torture, when you're thirsty, you're gonna be given pus, the green substance that comes out of your skin, and when you're hungry, you're going to be given thorns. And also in the Quran, there's a place where, Surah Ahzab 72, which God says He gave humans and mountains and heavens a choice whether to choose free will or not. But then humans were ignorant and unjust to choose free will, because free will comes with consequences. Like what it's suggesting is that angels and mountains and heavens also have souls, and in those ones they don't have any kind of free will, and it's better not to have free will, because at the end of the day they will not be judged and have to go to hell or heaven. So my idea was that it's better not to bring another subject into this test, where they have a possibility of going to hell or go to heaven, in that sense, because negating the possibility of going to hell is way much of a bigger and better thing, given that before them coming into this test, they're in a place where they don't need any hell or heaven. So I was already antinatalist in that sense, in a religious aspect. But then the first time I heard about the term antinatalist was when ISIS was breaking, ISIS in Syria was breaking and demolishing statues, and they were demolishing a statue of one al-Ma'ari. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Yeah, I know Al Murray well. I've actually done a video all about him. You obviously you feel free, obviously, to give a bit of an introduction to him for people that don't know. But yeah, I'm a big fan of Al Murray.
Yeah, so he was a blind philosopher. I think he caught smallpox when he was 6, and that led to his blindness. and now he became a poet. And I think, like, I'll just give a brief. I haven't gone really deep, or I might not be able to remember so many details.
Mm,
But yeah, so he was a blind philosopher, and what caught the attention was like, and that's always what happens is when you try and kill or suppress someone's ideas and all that, you just amplify it. Like, I would not have known of an
mm,
Al Ma'ari had they not broken his statue and slaughtered it
yeah.
and shot guns at it. But now I went onto the Wikipedia page, and I was like, who is this guy? Why are they triggered by such a person? And why did they build a statue of him in the first place? So I saw he was an antinatalist, vegan, philosopher, and poet. And I started reading
Mm,
some of his quotes, and I was like, wow, okay. There are people who, an ex-Muslim as well, by the way, like, and at that time I was also getting this um, identity of mine of trying to now understand my religion, and also like start deconstructing, like, my religion and whatnot. And so it was very eye-opening to see that someone at that time, where, like, they were being ruled by Islamic rules, they were under Sharia law and whatnot, like completely rejecting, like, Islam, but then also being vegan at that time. I think, I don't know what time he was in, but I think it is 1000 BCE.
yeah, it was
No,
about 1,000 years ago. Yeah.
yeah, 1000 years ago. So yeah, I think that's how I learned that there is a term called antinatalism. And then of course I was already on Reddit by that time, on ex-Muslim Reddit, because like, Reddit is a bit of anonymous, and many
Mm,
ex-Muslims find a safe haven there, because they don't have to expose who they are, because, like,
yeah.
being an ex-Muslim is not an easy thing. uh, and putting your identity out. So, and I saw another page of the antinatalism, and I started reading about antinatalism. So these were ideas that I already had, but then I ended up seeing that they are already, philosophy is written about this. And yeah, so it was one of those things where I self-figure that this is something that I'm thinking, and I'm thinking that, I'm coming with this marvel or new idea, only to go and see
Mm.
that there are books written about it and whatnot. Yeah,
Yeah. No, that's an amazing story, and there's a few questions I have about it.
yeah,
But just quickly on Almari,
yeah.
um, I don't think it can be. Obviously, you're very familiar with Almari. I'm familiar with Almari, but for people watching that are maybe not familiar with him, or maybe have never heard of him,
Mm-hmm,
it's kind of hard to understate how much of a radical he was in his time,
mm-hmm,
to the extent where he would be considered very radical even today,
yeah,
and we've had a lot of progress since then. You know, he rejected the main religions of the day, and he even ridiculed them.
mm-hmm,
He was, like you said, he was a vegan
mm-hmm,
for, I think, almost half of his
yeah,
life. Um, he was an antinatalist. He you can even still, well, I don't know how safe it would be to try and do this in
mm-hmm,
the current political context, but you can still go to Syria and visit his grave.
mm,
And on his grave, it says, "This is my father's crime done to me, but I did to no one."
yeah,
As in, his father created him, but he didn't create anyone else.
yeah,
And the antinatalism in Almari's poetry is, sometimes it's subtle, but sometimes it's actually very explicit.
yeah,
And he will actively command people, do not have children
yeah,
because of the badness of life.
yeah,
Um, yeah, so it's very cool that you came. It I guess it's like a very, like, it's a silver lining. Obviously, it's super bad what ISIS were doing, and
mm-hmm,
the fact that they defamed, or defaced his statue.
mm-hmm,
But at least there was this silver lining that someone like you heard about Al-Mari through that and was able to explore like his philosophies and stuff.
definitely,
Um,
yeah,
I wanted to ask you, you were saying that you first were kind of thinking in an anti-natalist way while you were a
yeah.
Muslim, and I wanted to understand, like, how long was that period? Was it did you come to think in an antinatalist way, and that kind of led you out of religion quite quickly, or did you hold those two things together for quite a long time?
Yeah, I was an antinatalist for a very long time in Islam, in the sense of I don't want to bring my child into a test where the possible consequences for them burning forever.
Mm,
So that was maybe for around 4 years. Like after I went to like maybe from right now I'm 29, so around 14 to 18, 19 years old. At 19 years old is when I dropped my religion, and at that time was when I also started thinking. Now, okay, hell
mm,
doesn't exist, so is my antinatalism like just gone? But then by that time, I was also in Turkey, and I was seeing how many unhappy people there are. How like how I was getting stuck in traffic, and I was looking at the people trying to go into their heads and seeing how repetitive people's lives are. Like wake up, get stuck in traffic for 2 hours, get to work, work for like until maybe 6, again get to another 2 hour traffic, back home, sleep, do the same thing again, repeat the same thing again and again. So at that time I was trying to
mm,
get a meaning out of religion. Like once religion falls, now you're forced almost into getting a meaning out of religion, and now I was trying to get a meaning of life. And when every single thing that I was seeing around me was really like life is meaningless, and not only meaningless but then full of suffering, because I was
mm,
seeing all this suffering from, as I was saying, the workers, the jobless people, like the children. At the time there were a lot of Syrian refugees flowing into Turkey because of the Syria war. So I was also seeing children
yeah.
in metros trying to sell like Soviets or something of the sort. So yeah, that really got me into very deep thinking.
Yeah. And when you were thinking in an antinatalist way but still a Muslim,
Yeah.
were you did you ever speak to other Muslims at all about this? And yeah, did you ever find any other Muslims that had kind of thought in this way?
Not really, and I think at that time it was very dear to me, because also Islam tells you to propagate and have children, so that
Mm,
the ummah, which is the ummah. How can I explain the ummah? The ummah is like the prophet's followers, so that you
yeah.
can make it bigger and all that. So I was really thinking about those things at that time, but then still trying to understand religion, why God created like people, and why He created all this suffering, and why He
Mm,
created eternal suffering as well. So all of them were going hand in hand, but then it was more of an internal fight. I was not sharing
yeah.
it with people. I think only after I became antinatalist for other reasons, like climate change, and seeing how much suffering there is in the world, understanding that,
Mm,
that's when I came back to now talk to religious people about, like the dangers of bringing your child into
mm.
a potential hell. Yeah.
Yeah, because I've so there's a place in so I'm in London in the UK, and there's a place we have here which I think is quite internationally known called Speaker's Corner,
Yeah.
and it's basically, yeah, you heard of
Yeah.
it. So it's basically a place that you go and you can
Debate.
share your
Yeah.
ideas and people will come and debate you.
Mm-hmm.
That's the purpose of the place. People go there to debate different ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been there a few times with other people to debate people about antinatalism. So we go there with antinatalist signs and we have discussions with people. And many of the people there are Muslims
Yeah.
and they are Islamic preachers.
Yeah.
And so you end up having a lot of conversations and debates with Muslims.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the main things that we bring up is the fact that, like you said, if you create a child, you're now creating the potential for them to go to hell,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And that seems like a very dangerous and risky thing to do for someone else.
Mm-hmm. Because
And
yeah, yeah, just to add, because unlike life, where the suffering has an ending of death, hell is
mm,
eternal. Like,
yeah,
so it's, yeah, you're bringing someone into a forced contract of a possibility of eternal. health, which God is also calling you stupid in the first place, like in the Surah Ahzab 72, ignorant, for you to choose, like coming into this life as a human being, which means
Mm,
free will. But then now you're imposing free will on someone else forcefully without asking them, for them to have to deal with it eternally, because you
mm.
believe that there is eternal punishment in case you fail the test. But yeah, yeah, you go on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, no, I was just saying that my experience speaking with Muslims about antinatalism. Now, the first thing to say is obviously I was going to speakers corner, so people are there to debate. They're trying to promote their own idea as well. So
Mhm.
it it's a cool place to go and debate ideas, but it's maybe not the best place to go if you're actually trying to change someone's mind.
Mhm.
So it's good obviously to get video of that, put it online, and then you can maybe change the audience's mind.
Mhm.
But yeah, people aren't always open to changing their
Yeah.
mind, ironically, in a place like that.
Yeah.
So I've tended not to have success with individual Muslims at somewhere like Speaker's Corner.
Mhm.
They tend to just kind of dismiss this point or say that children are they should be grateful that they were born because at least they get to exist and have the chance at going to the
Heaven.
Islamic version of heaven. Yeah, exactly.
Allah. Yeah.
um have you had any success talking to religious people or Muslims about this topic, or do you tend to find they just dismiss it?
No. Yeah. So basically, because I have the I have the ayahs, like the verses from the Quran where God is
Mm,
telling people, you are ignorant and unjust for
yeah.
choosing this. Once I go with those as evidence, or I go to mosques and hear imams, I know what imams are speaking on in the mosques, telling us that these are the end of times. It's harder for children to go to heaven because there's all this LGBTQ, which they deem as something really bad and evil, and
Mm,
getting their children. So, like the internet, children are being exposed to the internet, and all around the world in all mosques, they're all saying the same message, which we are getting far away from religion, and it will be harder for us. And so all that I use is all the Islamic texts, and the sayings of the Prophet of when we are nearing to the day of judgment. It will be harder for people to go into heaven than hell. And I'm telling people, okay, if already there was a 50% chance, all the imams, all the prophet, all the God as well is telling you that this is not a good decision for you. Yeah, because Muslims believe that they chose before. There's a place where their souls existed before coming, where all souls were just souls, but then humans are the ones who chose to come into this world using free will, and that's why the verse is saying you're wrong to choose this. So, like, when, because I am using so much of what their God is saying, so much of how this world is nothing. The main world is the hereafter. Like, don't live for this world and all that. I normally get little backlash because they
mm,
also see the world unfavorably, and they cannot go against their texts and scriptures to bring other people. So I have not had backlash. Like, where it ends is normally, okay, God also tells us to have children, so I will do that, so that I cannot go against God, and bringing more Muslims into this world
yeah,
is better than other religions dominating the world.
yeah.
So those are the reasons that they give, and I tell them at the end of the day they're selfish reasons. They're centric to you and your values and your religion, and you're bringing someone else. So normally our debates end with, "Oh, you're making sense," but my God also tells me to bring children, and society expects me to, and I will. But then
Mm,
I have many people think, because I normally talk to people one on one, like at my workplace. I post on my Instagram stories, and yeah. So mostly, like, because I'm using religious text, going at those people, so it's a bit easier for me. and I don't get as much backlash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you were saying that, so you first sort of started thinking in an antinatalist way when you were a Muslim, and then you left Islam
Hmm.
when you were still a teenager,
Hmm.
and but then you're still an antinatalist afterwards. So how did your basis for being an antinatalist change? Because presumably you're not antinatalist for the same reasons now, because you don't believe that hell exists, for example. So what is it? What is it now that makes you stay being an antinatalist?
Yeah, so during the transition from Islam into like basically atheism, I was really thinking like, so what is the meaning of life? I used to read a lot of newspapers, and as you know, news like is the worst thing mostly that has happened around the world and being put
Yeah.
into your face. And I used to find that depressing. But then I was also in the middle of the Syrian war. Like I was in Turkey, so I was seeing the effects of war, like firsthand. I was getting more exposure onto the world, onto the Congolese mines, for example, where children are mining, but children are fighting as well are being used as child soldiers. I was getting more of a sense of the capitalist system, and because in par with my university, I was getting to know about climate change as well, and the pressures that it has. I was getting to know about how the meat industry is working, and all that. I was also seeing people. I was also asking a lot of people, like, what is your meaning of life? Like, apart from work and all that, what is your actual meaning of life? And I think when that transition was happening, I was also getting to know so many things in the world, and I think I had come with this philosophy where I used to say there are three levels of knowledge, like not knowing anything, and you can be really happy when you don't know. Like ignorance is a bliss.
Mhm.
In a way, if
Yeah.
you're stuck somewhere where you don't know about climate change, where you don't know about where your phones and devices batteries are coming from, where you don't know, like the Indian kids who are mining some ingredients that are needed for lipstick. There are actually people who are in slavery because of debt in India and whatnot. So at that time, when you don't, there is that level of not knowing, which meant like before Islam, I was in, I would say. I did not know much about the world. But then after, then there's a level of knowing where now you're aware of all these things, and they're kind of overwhelming. Like, and they can lead to, I would say, wanting not to exist or wanting not to pursue life because there's a lot of things which would not make sense. Then there's the third. This is what I was trying to make up in my mind. And then there's the third stage, which now but you're almost in control and trying to seek for happiness despite that knowledge, knowing that all your efforts can come only to a place. Even if you just focus, you cannot focus on all the injustices happening in the world.
Mm.
Because once you know about all these injustices, you still try to be happy. You try to do as much as you can, but at the end of the day, knowing that you cannot do much in terms of eliminating all the suffering of this world. And at that time, I realized, okay, actually, one way that you can actually end all suffering is, and the non-violent way is actually not bringing a child. You cannot like
Mm.
go right now. Like for example, Gaza is happening, and we are almost tied onto our phones and to our seats, just watching, like tirelessly, and like where we cannot help, you cannot do anything about it, but then it lives in your head, knowing that right now there's a kid being bombed. Um, so yeah, I think then I realized that antinatalism, that was like my realization of antinatalism. I think I have one Reddit post that I wrote and said, I give up fighting injustices, and every single person, you right now, are part of, and like the capitalist system we're living in right now. Whether you want it or not, you are part of causing someone else harm, either from maybe your clothes or a cheap Chinese laborer that is overworked and underpaid, or fuel, where a lot of people had to die for you to just commute or order some food that will come from a place to another again. Yeah,
Mm,
so once you realize all those things, it just becomes overwhelming, and you realize, okay, maybe the only thing that you can do is not bring a child, not bring more people
mm.
into this. Yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned before. So obviously, we spoke before about Almari, and Almari was also a vegan. He spoke about the importance of caring for the concerns of animals, and you mentioned animal agriculture before, and you're speaking about like the harm that we do just by existing.
Yeah.
And in my perspective, most of the harm we do harm other humans, but most of the harm we do is to other
Yeah.
animals.
Yeah.
Because me and you, in some ways, like in the ways we consume, there are probably maybe some human deaths that we are in some way responsible for in
Yeah.
the supply chain,
Yeah.
but there are many, many more animal deaths that we're responsible for. Is my understanding, and I wondered, like, have you ever explored animal ethics before or animal rights? Do you have any views on vegan, or if you're vegan yourself, or what do you think about that area of things?
Yeah, so I like over that period where I was really thinking about many things. One of the things I thought about was veganism. There was a time where there was an Eid al Adha or Eid al Fitri. I think Eid al Adha, yeah, which is the slaughtering Eid, where my dad asked me to slaughter a goat, and I said no.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
and I think that was for me, like, when I said, okay, this is not for me, because I really, we used to keep chicken as kids just to be able to keep chicken, to have many chicken, not really to eat them. We were eating eggs by that time, but then I just had so much pride of having my chicken, having personalities for chicken. Later on, I really came to love dogs, and I think slowly by slowly I started going much more on the vegan side. I will not lie and say, like, I went completely vegan. I think because of the food options, but then also that, once I got married, I and my wife realized that, we'll always find excuses, and there's a lot of alternatives, like, for protein
Mm,
and all that. So I think it is now that I've really started completely trying to go vegan.
mm. Yeah, no, that's super cool because I think you know, like you were saying, the world is a really, really messed up place for us humans. Um, and even though it's messed up for us, it's even worse for animals. And if we as individual people can play less of a part in hurting animals and making the world messed up for them, then it's a good thing to do. um and obviously, being an antinatalist, you don't want to be paying for births to happen. And when you're buying meat or dairy or eggs, you're basically paying for births to happen. um yeah. So no, that's cool. The next thing I wanted to ask you about was Kenya. So still related to antinatalism, but I thought it would be interesting to ask you about what it's like being an antinatalist in Kenya and the experiences you've had, because most people watching won't have been to Kenya, then they won't be from Kenya. I know the past two podcasts you've done have both been Kenyan podcasts, so the majority of the viewers are probably from Kenya. Um, but can you give us like a basic overview of what is Kenyan culture like when it comes to discussing controversial topics like antinatalism? So the two podcasts you did, both of the hosts seemed very open minded, very civil. It was a normal conversation. It didn't get emotional or anything like that. Is that very normal in Kenyan culture? Can people discuss ideas like controversial ones like this very openly, or do you have to? What is the culture like?
Yeah, so Kenya is really multicultural, and we have a lot of European influence in Kenya. Everyone speaks English. Like, on the coast side of Kenya, like, most people are Muslim, and when you come inwards, there's a lot of mixture of Christian and cultured people. But then I think all over the world right now with the Gen Z rising, these things are easier to speak about. Like, there's a lot of feminism movements that are coming up, and a lot of feminism is also coming up with some sort of child-free and antinatalism. So it is an open space in that sense. Like, when I go to my office and I speak, there is no much violence. It's more of like how I've never met someone who thinks like that.
Mm.
It's a completely new idea in Kenya, but then it's being taken with a bit of questions and not shushing off. Like, very few people, I think. Last week is when, after my first podcast, um, I went back to my office, and we were talking, and a former colleague had come to our office as well, and he was a bit, now, all these ideas I was just talking in our office, but then when I went onto podcast, he was a bit now agitated, I would say, asking me like, what are you trying to do? Do you know there's so many stupid people who can listen to you? I said, I don't believe that people are stupid. I believe people are smart, and if you really give them, like, logic based arguments, they will come to their own conclusion. And I kept telling him, antinatalism is not something like I can force onto someone. It's only an idea that I can bring up to people and understand, so people can understand where I'm coming from. And if they choose, they choose. And I believe many people, if opened to that idea, I believe people are inherently smart. This is maybe someone who is also believing that people are inherently stupid. I say most of the people are smart. Is just that they are not exposed to information. They are not
Mm.
exposed to ways of thinking. They don't even know. There are many people are living without even realizing why they're living. Many people are living either from society's eyes, or because of religion says so. So you have to do so. And once you bring someone, like, concrete evidence and questions and all that, and they would ask you questions, then why don't you kill yourself? Why don't you this and that? Like, do you want humanity to end? And when you have consistent answers for all those, like, people really do think. And I think the hardest people to talk to, at least in Kenya, is normally parents. And
Right.
yeah, so because now this is someone who already has a child, and you're telling them it was best not to bring this child. But then I always also have a way of speaking to them where I tell them, uh, antinatalism as well is asking you to also understand the burden that you've put onto your child, so that you can do every single thing to become a good parent. So I'm not condemning you. You probably did not think about all these things that I'm telling you before. You thought it was a norm to just bring a child, because at least from where I come from in Mombasa, and that's how I excuse, I would say, my parents for
Mm.
bringing me, is that they're not thinking. They're not thinking beyond God has said so, or everyone is doing it, so we have to do it, or that is what is expected of us. And now, when I'm bringing all these thoughts, especially to parents, I also write. I think I've also written another tech. I think I will share with you my Reddit page, and you can just go through it. So I've written another one that to parents, like, antinatalism to already parents. It's not us condemning you and telling you you're evil for bringing children.
Yeah.
Maybe before you had all this, but then at least take it as a call to make sure that you take complete care of your child, not just until they're 18. You've brought a life. You have not just brought a baby who you only have an X amount of time to take care of. It's your responsibility because you have brought. So yeah, I think that's what Kenya has been, at least so far.
Mm. And I know you spoke a bit about your experience talking about antinatalism there, like with your colleague. What it obviously with this question, only share what you're comfortable sharing. But what has your experience been like talking about antinatalism with like your friends or your partner or your family? How have you found it's maybe impacted those relationships? And again, obviously, only share what you're comfortable sharing.
No, I think like at least for my partner, I on our first date we met in Turkey as well, and on our first date I already told her that I'm an antinatalist and these are my reasons, and she found them valid. She didn't want to have kids for completely different reasons. She didn't want to have kids because she was already almost like a mom to another five kids because she's coming from a family which the parents had separated. So and she's the eldest. So
Right.
she felt like already fatigued. But then when once I came and told her all my reasons, and she was like, "Ah, okay, that actually makes sense. I already didn't want to have kids, but then this also makes sense." To my siblings, I think for example, my youngest sibling also understands it the same way, and to to all people, I think I am very convincing. I'm a salesperson as well by profession. I have a lot of sales experiences. So once I'm coming to talk to people, like I feel like I'm able to take myself to their understanding and bring them from there onwards. Like at the end, there is no otherization because of this
Mm.
idea. People might just end it at, or then you're traumatized. It makes sense because you're traumatized, but then no one will really come and feel like they're attacked or anything of the sort. They will understand because I really try and give all my understanding and examples and all the questions. I make sure I have answers to. So in that sense, I've never had that kind of backlash because of antinatalism. I've had it because of going away from Islam,
Right.
which people feel more personal about, but then antinatalism, not really.
Mm. And do you know if there are other antinatalists in Kenya? Is there any form of like network or community? Or you said that there were some feminist movements, and maybe some of those are a bit antinatalist. Yeah, do you know any other antinatalists in Kenya?
I just on Reddit again. I also
Right.
post antinatalist stuff on Reddit as well. And when I posted, I think my last post, there were many people who are antinatalists, but then there's no like group which I know of antinatalists, and
Right.
uh, and that. But then apart from that, like I know personally people who are like, yeah, okay, it makes sense. Like as I said, my wife, my brother,
Mm.
many people. At the end of the day, I think I was also speaking to some workers like back at work who when we're going back home, I normally drive them and give them a lift, and I always almost speak about antinatalism any chance I get, and
Yeah.
so yeah, every time I speak, I think people are listening and they're like, "Ah, okay, it makes sense, makes sense,"
Yeah.
and that's it. Yeah.
So that because so normally when I'm speaking to someone from whatever country about antinatalism, I will try and do some research to see if I can come across any antinatalists. The only Kenyan antinatalists I came across were there was this YouTube channel which they don't upload to anymore, and I'm not sure if they're friends or a couple, but it's a man and a woman, and the man on the YouTube channel is an antinatalist, and they moved to Nairobi and then stopped uploading to YouTube. So I don't know what happened to them. I can put a link in the description for anyone watching, and I can send you the link, and you can sort of see their videos and stuff. I think they only talk about antinatalism in one video, um, but yeah. So I couldn't find much about antinatalism in Kenya
No,
either.
there's not. Yeah, there's not much, and every single person you just tell is surprised that something
Mm,
like that even exists. Like there's some people who don't actually want children, and they'll
yeah,
always
yeah,
tell you children normally come with their own plates, which means they when they come, the money of them will come. And I normally try to tell them it's not just about money, and
mm,
but then yeah, it's a really new concept in Kenya. I think because Kenya is normally mostly a conformist
mm,
kind of place. Like there's no much. I think in my last podcast, I was really telling the guy that I think we need to replace religious studies in school with philosophy because there's no much philosophy
yeah.
at very young ages. But yeah. There's not much of an antinatalist community or antinatalist YouTubers. My wife and I are thinking about starting, like, a podcast around antinatalism and all other issues. Maybe we'll be the first Kenyan, mainly antinatalist podcast, but then or like a YouTube channel. But then until then, I haven't seen much.
Yeah. That would be really cool if you and your partner did that, because I think, like, obviously the more people talking about antinatalism, the better. But at the moment, there are only a few people who regularly produce content or work about antinatalism, and I think the situation has gotten better. It used to people used to call antinatalism, it's Western, it's for rich people, this sort of stuff, and I think that image is changing because there's groups in Japan, there's groups in India now who are very actively doing antinatalist stuff. But I think the more people from different places around the world who can be talking about antinatalism, the better. Because obviously, someone in Kenya is maybe going to take what you say more seriously than they take what I say seriously. Maybe just because they relate to you more or whatever. Um, so yeah, I think that would be really cool if you guys did that. Um,
I just remembered something. I just remembered in the time for I there's this guy when you mentioned India that came to mind. There was also this guy who was suing the Indian guy who was suing his parents for bringing.
yes,
Yeah, I
Raphael
think that was
Samuel.
also
Yeah,
at the time where I was learning about Almari and all those. I also came across that guy, and it was also intriguing. Of like, oh, okay, I didn't because you were saying I don't have to look for jobs, and the parents brought him here to look for jobs and get stuck in traffic and have to have headaches and what. So I think that as well, I have to shout out that guy because he was someone as well who made me a bit like think about antinatalism or take me towards that direction.
yeah, yeah. No, 100%. And I actually interviewed Raphael Samuel as well. I can send you the link to that. I'll put the link in the description for anyone that's watching. The last thing I wanted to ask you about Kenya was, do you know if antinatalism has ever been discussed in the media there, like any news articles or news reports or discussions on panel shows?
No, no, I really think the at least in the mainstream media of YouTube um, the podcasts that have been going, they're really
Yeah.
popular podcasts actually. Like the Econini podcast, I think has 211,000 subscribers,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
and it's quite new. It's quite new. Like once I haven't seen much of people in either in the media or, and that's why like these podcasters want me on because it's something
Mm,
also new. They want to bring something new of value. So it's not something that I've seen at least on the media, and
yeah.
even while talking to people, it's not something that people have even heard. Like it's almost always every single time I talk to someone, it's the first time
Yeah.
they're getting to hear about like antinatalism.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I kind of guess that was the fact as well. It's the case in most countries is that this subject has just very little attention paid to it. But what that means is that individuals like me or you or other people who want to speak about this subject, you can actually have quite a large impact because it's kind of like a first mover advantage. That's a term used in business, I think, but it's the fact that, like, if there's no one in Kenya actually talking about this thing, then if you're like the first person who's kind of talking about it in the media and stuff like that, you could actually have like quite a big impact as an individual to get people thinking about the subject. So that's super cool. One sort of final thing I wanted to ask you was, I know you mentioned like a potential podcast with you and your partner. Do you have any ideas or plans or hopes for the future that you want to do around antinatalism at all, or are you just kind of taking life as it is?
I think yeah. I think one of my main life purposes at the moment, given how many Reddit posts I post, how much I post on antinatalism, is really trying to make people think about having children, especially in this kind of situation, especially with the resources, the pressure that we're having on resources in the world, especially with climate change and its effects about to happen, especially with, like, the joblessness. Like in Kenya, the joblessness is quite big, and even the people who have jobs, it's like, the line between a worker and like a robot is very thin, where people are, you like, when you come to Kenya, if you come to Kenya, you would see lines, for example, at 5 a.m.
Right.
Waiting for buses, because you also don't have metros. So you find someone, maybe because of convenience, having to live 40 kilometers away from the city, and take a bus at the time where every single other person is coming, and spend almost 2 hours, maybe wake up at 3 a.m. Like I most of, like, the workers
Mm.
at my place wake up 3, 4 a.m. and have to walk some distances and take buses and come and also take another bus. And the competition has, like, because there's so many people, the competition for very little jobs is becoming way much more. There's ever growing slums and there's ever growing protests of people who are unhappy with the economic conditions. And it's a time where, when we're speaking into all these things, people are really receiving it well, because I think we're living in the effects of uncontrolled, like, birth giving, uncontrolled, um, and using with medicine, for example, with medicine um, advancing, we are not having many child birth deaths,
Right.
and it's easy for children to come up. So we are having this, and places like Kenya, in places like Japan, there are way many more old people than there are children. But, like,
Mm.
places in Kenya is quite the opposite. So
Right.
you can see a lot of youth who are jobless and trying to make it, and it's easy, like, it's
Yeah.
an easy place to start, like, preaching the message of try and have, like, let's not bring more people into this. All of you are suffering, don't bring another person to come and suffer, like, you are suffering. What you end up realizing is more of, like, the comfortable people, the people with money, the people who are not in debt, people who are comfortable enough, they're the ones who are more willing to have children, and a bit against antinatalism. But then the bigger majority are not comfortable, and the bigger majority which is not comfortable are really open to the idea of antinatalism.
Mm. Yeah, and that's cool because if since you're in a country where there's a lot more young people, obviously old people, they can't have kids. They've either already had kids, or if they haven't, they're not going to be having kids because they're old. Whereas with young people, they're often in a position where they could have children, but they haven't decided yet, or they just haven't done it yet. So it's actually quite good that you're in a country where there's a lot of young people, because then you can actually influence their decisions. Whereas with old people, they've already made their decisions. So that's kind of cool as well. Um, yeah, I just wanted to say, you know, thank you for coming on. Those were all the questions that I wanted to go through.
I think I have
Was
a question, yeah,
Yeah,
for you.
okay, go on. Yeah, I was going to
Yeah.
ask if there was anything you wanted
Yeah,
to.
so when did you come about antinatalism, and like, the question of, like, what are you living for, or why wouldn't you, like, it's a question I get asked a lot. I know how to answer. I have an answer for it, but then why wouldn't you kill yourself? For example,
Yeah.
I think you've come across such a question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I first came across antinatalism when I was living in Sweden. I was there on an
Mhm.
exchange program, and
My wife is from there.
oh, your wife is from Sweden.
Yeah, she's Djiboutian, but then lived her most of her life in Sweden, in a place called Falun.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I lived in Uppsala.
Uppsala, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So it's just north of Stockholm.
yeah,
Oh, that's really cool.
yeah.
Yeah, so I was in Sweden on an exchange program,
Hmm.
and I overheard a conversation about having children, and one of the guys in the conversation was an antinatalist, and So I kind of heard about the concept then, and then later when I was back in the UK, which is where I'm originally from, I was then at an animal rights demonstration, and there were a few antinatalists there, and I was speaking to them, and they
Mm-hmm.
basically, explained it to me, answered my questions, and then they
Mm-hmm.
sent me away with a few links to David Benatar interviews, and so I
Mm-hmm.
listened to those, and I just got to the point where I was like, look, there's been good answers to all my questions, and I don't have a good argument against this, so I've just got to adopt it as part of my worldview, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's kind of how I came across it, and then that was back when I was about 20 years old. I'm now 28.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, I am 28, aren't I? I always forget how old I am. I'm pretty sure I'm
Yeah,
28.
same. Same. I think
Yeah,
I'm 29 as well. Yeah,
yeah,
29.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's maybe I just turned 29. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, for like the first maybe like 4 or 5 years of being an antinatalist, I didn't really speak about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then about 4 or 5 years ago, I started to speak about it more. And then I started doing my YouTube channel, and the
Mm-hmm.
rest is kind of history from there. And I've been doing my
Mm-hmm.
YouTube channel ever since and exploring the idea. In terms of like what I live for and why I don't end it all. So I think there's a whole range of stuff. So I mean, it I mean, honestly, it depends how philosophical you want to get. But if I was to give my general answer, um, there's a few things. One is like, I think antinatalists can recognize that once you exist, you can enjoy the things in life and want to continue doing them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's not a reason to create someone, because if they don't exist, it's not like they want to come into existence. They don't want to be born to have all of the stuff that we're enjoying, right? So that's
Mm-hmm.
not a reason to create them, and it's not a reason to impose suffering on them. But
Mm-hmm.
if you have been created and you are here, then you can enjoy, the things in life.
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoy the things I do with my friends. I enjoy doing this YouTube channel. I I climb, so I enjoy going climbing and doing exercise.
Mm-hmm.
Even though, look, ultimately, if you want to look at this from a cosmic perspective,
Mm-hmm.
everything I'm doing is meaningless, and I'm just trying to distract myself from the fact that we live in a meaningless universe and there's no
Mm-hmm.
ultimate reason to do anything. I get that, and everything I'm pursuing is essentially a distraction from that fact.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I enjoy the distractions.
Yeah.
And I know that's kind of paradoxical, but yeah, so that's one reason.
Mm-hmm.
Another reason is that I think as part of my life, I can do good in the world and reduce suffering as well, So
Mm-hmm.
I can try and promote antinatalism, and hopefully that'll get some people to choose to stop bringing new people here or new animals here. I can do animal rights activism and improve the world for animals. um so yeah, there's those are kind of the main reasons why
Mm-hmm.
I yeah, sort of pursue, like, continue life. And yeah, I don't know if that answered your
Yeah,
question, but
yeah, it did.
yeah.
It did. I think it's almost the same, but there's a absurdism. I don't know if you've heard of the philosophy of absurdism. I
Yes,
think
yeah, yeah,
yeah, maybe check Albert Camus.
yeah,
It's just that like and as well, like killing someone who has already existed, them dying when they already have loved ones and all that is not the same as not bringing someone who has no any inherent need of that.
yeah,
So every single time I tell people, like, I would not go and kill, for example, a child that is suffering. I'll try and make it better, but then I will not create. That is not to say that killing, because I think I was having a very long conversation with some imam who was telling me, the fact, the beauty of life is, if you go and ask anyone right now, even if they're going through so much, if they want to die, if they will accept or not, if life is suffering. I said, you cannot really make comparisons or equations between those two things. Killing
mm,
someone who is already alive, who has loved ones, who has people who want, who they have a relationship with, killing someone who also has an instinct not to die is really not the same um, as not bringing someone
Yeah.
into life, someone who does not even know that they don't exist. Those are the two different things. But then, yeah, I normally try and go deep into those conversations and, really try and explain to people that it's not the same, and that also right now, yeah, like I believe life is meaningless, and we're just trying to distract ourselves from the fact and try to look for other things. But I'm also a believer when life becomes very much more of suffering, for example, because of old age and diseases and
Mm.
chronic diseases, that also people need to be given a choice to euthanize, to end it. I'm
Yes.
also a proponent of euthanasia, where if someone is really suffering, like to the point where now living is dying is better than suffering, people should be given that choice as well. So yeah, I think, yeah, I don't know what you think on about euthanasia.
Yeah, I'm a supporter of euthanasia. I think that fundamentally, we think that we own our own lives, right? Like
Hmm.
that was why we rejected uh slavery. We say slavery is wrong because someone else shouldn't be able to own your life. You own your own life. But I think
Hmm.
if owning your own life is to be coherent, then part of that needs to be having autonomy over the decision as to when it ends.
Hmm.
Now, I completely understand that taking one's life is a very serious thing to do. It's a very significant thing to do. So I do
Hmm.
think it's reasonable for there to be safeguards in place so that people can't just, do it on a whim or something like that.
Hmm. Hmm.
But I think fundamentally people should have access to a dignified way of dying when they choose that is right for them, with appropriate safeguards in place.
Hmm.
Because I just think if you're disallowed that, then fundamentally you don't really own your own life in any coherent way. If someone can tell
Hmm.
you no, you have to continue,
Yeah.
this your life. Um, so yeah, obviously it alleviates a lot of people's suffering as well.
Hmm.
I've seen people like family, friends, and family members die in ways that you don't want someone who you care about to go through that and die well at all, but
Yeah.
definitely die in that way.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I think they should have been able to choose for themselves whether they want to go through that indignity and that suffering at the end of their life. And I
Hmm.
think many people would choose not to. I would choose not to. I would get to a point where I say no, this is enough, and I want to opt for euthanasia. And I think it's
Hmm.
fine for people to say no as well, but
Yeah. Yeah.
they shouldn't be able to take the right away from someone else to
Yeah.
be able
Yeah.
to end their suffering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one last question I would want to ask is, what about, I'm married to a woman. Do you have a partner? Are you planning to have a partner in, and how is your relationship with your parents? And do you talk to your parents about antinatalism?
Yeah, so I don't have a partner at the moment. I did have a partner, but the relationship ended
Hmm.
relatively recently.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, and then in the long term, I obviously want to find another partner who I'm better suited to.
Hmm.
And yeah, I think I maybe forgot part of your question.
Your
I know you
parents,
asked about
the
parents.
relationship with your parents, and if you have opened up to them. Yeah.
Yeah, so my parents know that I'm an antinatalist. I haven't really spoken to my mum about it. I've spoken to my dad about it. We don't talk about it regularly, just because
Hmm.
I think it's a bit of a sore issue,
Hmm.
which is understandable.
Yeah.
Like I think if they fully understood antinatalism, it maybe wouldn't be a sore issue. But I think
Hmm.
given that they live in a very natalist world and they still have that kind of understanding, I
Mhm.
think obviously I can see why it's kind of maybe a bit upsetting to them, obviously, you know.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Um, so yeah, it's not something that we talk about, but it's not a significant thing that
Mm.
makes the relationship worse or something
Mm.
like that.
Mm.
Um, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I'm normally quite interested, like, about how the dynamic is between, because at the end of the day, you're almost telling your parent that, they did a mistake bringing you, which
Yeah,
I normally try and say, okay, I'm excusing you and just like I'm excusing every other person because they did not know that this is an option. Uh, they were living in more of like, societal enclosed
yeah,
places where every
yeah.
single person was doing it. So yeah, I try to tell them that I'm not blaming you in a way, and this is something that is to be taken forward. I'm here. I don't have this victim mentality, but then I can do something about
Yeah.
the future. Yeah.
Exactly. I think it's from the Bible where "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do."
Mm-hmm.
I might have butchered that quote, and it might not even be from the Bible. I think it's from the Bible,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that's kind of like that's the approach that we should take to parents,
Mm-hmm.
because the vast majority of people have never heard about antinatalism. They live in a very natalist world, a pro-natalist world,
Mm-hmm.
and that is obviously going to influence their psychology. In fact, I'm researching a video right now which is about how natalism influences our thinking and the society around us.
Mm-hmm.
um so yeah, you've got to have some sympathy for people in that,
Empathy. Yeah.
they didn't, it's not like they wanted to screw you over or something like
Yeah.
that. They
Yeah.
saw
Yeah.
they saw it as an act of love or something like that, which
Or conforming
I
to the society norms. Yeah.
yeah, or just
Uh-huh. Or, yeah.
conforming, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um Yeah, which obviously me and you are going to think is misguided, but at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day, that's the situation we're in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, there was something else I was going to say about that, but it's gone from my mind. Um, yeah, I can't remember. Um, but yeah, was there anything else you wanted to touch on?
I think no, that's it. I think I will also share with you my Reddit page where I
Yeah,
write a lot on the antinatalism Reddit. I like on different things. I think that lastly, after getting married and getting close to my wife, and I think she has endometriosis, where she's not yet
right.
diagnosed, but then her periods are very painful.
Yeah,
Um, so, one of the things that I was writing was like, bringing a female child who will, from maybe sometimes at the age of 8, have to every single month go through like, a cycle of, excruciating pain
yeah,
again and again and again. I think people really need to think about that. And that there's like, no need in terms of meaning, but even if you're religious, there's really no need to bring a child into this. So yeah, I think I really enjoyed the conversation.
yeah. No, me too. And please do send over like your links, because I'll put them in the description. I'm also going to link the 2 interviews you've already done.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah. So if people want to hear more from Aziz, there's,
Mhm.
I think, 2-3 hours more worth of interviews that you've
Yeah.
already done that people can
Yeah.
listen to. And
Mhm.
you get into other topics as well other than antinatalism.
Yeah.
So
Religion, mostly
yeah,
religion.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, but yeah, thank you so much for giving me your time and sharing your thoughts, and I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Thank you for having me as well.